In the next few minutes, we're going to break down the political storm brewing in Britain. We'll explore why Jeremy Clarkson's arrest has become a symbol of rural discontent, and how Andrew Neil is using this to challenge Keir Starmer's leadership. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video. We'll dive into Starmer's policy flip-flops, his dismissal of public petitions, and the Labour Party's war on the countryside. By the end, you'll understand why farmers are turning against Starmer and what this means for the future of British politics. Jeremy Clarkson, the former Top Gear host turned unlikely farming champion, has emerged as a powerful voice for rural Britain. His journey from petrolhead to passionate agriculturalist has given him a unique platform to challenge Labour's policies affecting the countryside. Clarkson's popular Amazon series Clarkson's Farm has not only entertained viewers, but also educated them about the harsh realities of modern farming. Clarkson's confrontational stance against Labour's rural policies has struck a chord with many in farming communities. He's been vocal about the challenges faced by farmers, from bureaucratic red tape to economic pressures. His recent arrest during a farmers' protest has only amplified his message, turning him into a symbol of rural discontent. Labour's proposed policy changes have sent shock waves through the countryside. Their commitment to building 1.5 million new homes has raised alarm bells, particularly the plan to redesignate parts of the Green Belt as Grey Belt. Farmers and rural residents fear this could lead to unchecked development and the loss of precious green spaces. The push for net zero policies, including the installation of wind turbines and solar farms, has further stoked fears about the changing face of rural landscapes. These urban-centric policies have left many in farming communities feeling threatened and overlooked. There's a growing sentiment that Labour doesn't understand or value the rural way of life. Farmers argue that their role in food production and land management is being undermined by policies that prioritize urban development and climate goals without considering the practical realities of agriculture. The scale of rural pushback against these policies is reaching unprecedented levels. The National Farmers Union FEW has planned a massive track-toll demonstration in central London, a clear sign of organized rural dissent. Even more dramatically, some farmers' groups are threatening to block ports and withhold non-perishable produce, potentially disrupting supermarket supplies. These actions underscore the depth of frustration and the lengths to which rural communities are willing to go to make their voices heard. As the countryside rebellion gains momentum, all eyes are turning to Keir Starmer. European. That's a big change, that a problem for Mr. S, who is much cozier with the traditional European consensus. How will the Labour leader respond to this growing crisis? Will he address the concerns of rural voters, or will his dismissive attitude further alienate an already disgruntled demographic? The answers to these questions could shape the political landscape for years to come. Keir Starmer's political journey has taken an unexpected turn. Once hailed as Labour's great hope, he now finds himself at odds with a significant portion of rural Britain. What's behind this dramatic shift, and could it spell disaster for Labour's electoral ambitions? Starmer's dismissive response to a petition signed by over 3 million people has left many scratching their heads. This wasn't just any petition, it was a clear message from rural communities feeling ignored and undervalued. Have you had enough of the lies? Have you had enough of the way that our pensioners are being treated? Have you had enough of the way the farmers are being treated? But instead of addressing their concerns, Starmer brushed them off, further widening the gap between Labour and the countryside. It's a far cry from the early days of Starmer's leadership, when he promised to reconnect Labour with rural voters. He spoke of understanding their unique challenges and pledged to be a champion for all of Britain, not just urban centres. These promises resonated with many who felt left behind by previous Labour administrations, but actions speak louder than words, and Starmer's recent policy decisions tell a different story. Build itself, because it's quite hard to see anywhere where the right is doing well, which does not now involve the populism. His support for increased housing development on Greenbelt land has alarmed rural communities. The push for rapid transition to renewable energy, while laudable in principle, has been seen as tone-deaf to the practical realities faced by farmers and rural businesses. Andrew Neil, never one to mince words, has been particularly scathing in his assessment of Starmer's leadership. Neil points out that Starmer's inability to effectively respond to public concerns reflects a deeper disconnect with ordinary people, particularly in rural areas. He's accused Starmer of flip-flopping on key issues and failing to deliver on his promises to bridge the urban-rural divide. The consequences of Starmer's missteps are becoming increasingly clear. Labor's support in rural constituencies is plummeting. Reports suggest the party could lose up to 59 of its most marginal seats due to dissatisfaction among farmers and rural voters. Where should they get the money from if it's not from farmers? We hear that everyone would thinks you should be paying for everything. This decline is attributed to perceived neglect and urban-centric policies that simply don't resonate with rural communities. As the next general election looms on the horizon, the question on everyone's mind is, can Starmer turn this ship around, or has he irreparably damaged Labour's relationship with rural Britain? The answers to these questions could shape the political landscape for years to come, potentially redrawing the electoral map and altering the balance of power in British politics. Well, Margaret Hodge, a little bit Teddy, but and also the problem has been that the more he tries to explain, the worse it gets, which is the growing divide between Labour and rural Britain is no longer just a whisper in the wind. It's a full-blown storm. Keir Starmer's dismissive attitude towards the concerns of farmers and rural communities has created a rift that seems to widen with each passing day. The Labour leader's policy flip-flops and urban-centric focus have left rural voters feeling overlooked and undervalued. This rural discontent could have far-reaching consequences for Labour's electoral prospects of opposition without a change of leader. Well, maybe you were right, because it did turn out to be untenable. The party's traditional strongholds in urban areas may not be enough to secure a victory if they continue to alienate rural voters. The countryside rebellion, symbolized by figures like Jeremy Clarkson, threatens to erode Labour's support base and potentially reshape the political landscape. As we look to the future, one question looms large: can British politics find a way to bridge the urban-rural divide, or will rural communities continue to feel that their voices are drowned out by the clamor of city life? The answer may well determine the fate of parties like Labour and the very nature of representation in British democracy.